Hello, friends. How are you?
Right.
I am so happy that we're all here together, and I want to tell you a little bit about our guest. Our guest is the amazing Choman Hardi. Right now, she is in Kurdistan, Iraq. So it's such a great joy that Choman is here with us today. And the reason why we are interviewing Choman today is because she's amazing. And on this channel, on SuperYou Tuesdays, we celebrate real, true, real life superheroes. And what Choman is doing in Iraq is paving new ground for women to have a voice. In a country where honor killings still exist, where there's still such thing as female genital mutilation, Choman is there educating people and empowering people to think a different way. So what a joy that now in this country we're celebrating 100 years of the suffragette movement from the 19th Amendment. 100 years, and yet there's still so far to go. And in Iraq, in Kurdistan, Iraq, they're still just figuring it all out. Am I right, Choman?
We are along the way, yes.
Am I right? So it is a great honor that I introduce you all to Choman Hardi. Hello, Dr. Choman Hardi, educator, scholar, and overall a pioneer for women's rights. Thank you so much for being here. What a joy and honor.
Thank you for that kind introduction. And hi, everyone. Very nice to be here with you.
So wonderful that you're here. You know, I'd love it because your father was a poet. Is that right? Did you grow up with poetry?
I did, yes. I mean, he knew a lot of poetry by heart, so hearing poetry and seeing poetry books in the house was very usual, part of my childhood memories.
So you published poetry books, am I right?
That's right. First in my mother tongue and then in English.
Right. So I know you have a poem that maybe we could start off with to get people a little excited, to see a little taste of your mind and your creations. And if I may, I'm going to try to see if I can jam a little bit on the violin with you. Does that sound good?
Yes, please.
Now, here's the thing, folks. There is a time delay on this this internet world, but we're going to create magic, and together we're going to do a poem that Choman wrote. Now, it was originally in Kurdish. Am I right, Choman?
No, this one was written in English.
Okay. Can you tell us the name of it?
What Women Want. It's actually named after a romantic film, Mel Gibson, What Women Want, and it's a reclaiming of what women want.
I love it. Well, let's give it a whirl, shall we? I'm going to give a little intro and let's see how it goes.
What women want. Sometimes the whole world of women weep, complain, shout, fight. Sometimes they hold their silence. Sometimes they argue amongst themselves, compete. Sometimes they love, cherish, support each other. Sometimes they stand together alone. Sometimes they're interrupted, not cared for. Sometimes they don't know themselves. Sometimes they cry. Kill themselves. Sometimes Sometimes they're expected to starve themselves. Sometimes they starve themselves. Sometimes they cut their noses. Other times they cut their noses. Sometimes they go under the surgeon's knife unknowingly. Victims. Sometimes all they want is not to be stopped, investigated. Sometimes they want out of their definitions. Sometimes
How'd that go? Well, we tried a little bit of a poetry jam, and I feel excited because we are bringing United States and Kurdistan, Iraq together in this moment. So now we get to share more about your life. Can you tell me, Choman, a little bit about your history? So what made you choose to create a whole women's studies curriculum in Kurdistan, Iraq? How did that happen? Can you take me back to where you were born and a little bit about the story about your life?
Sure. I mean, I was born in Kurdistan, Iraq, Middle East. And as a child, I didn't really notice much difference between me and my male siblings or cousins. But I think as a teenager, it all started to happen where I realized that there are many restrictions on my life because I was a girl, that I couldn't go out, that I couldn't wear certain things, or I couldn't do certain things that my brothers and cousins did. And this sense of injustice, as a teenager, you're already going through a lot of changes, your body's changing, hormones are all upside down. And then we became refugees in Iran because of the political situation, where I had to wear the hijab, and not by choice, of course, it was imposed on us. And there were many restrictions, further restrictions on my life. And I was a very angry teenager. And my mother always says, you were such a good child, and then you became an angry teenager. Luckily, in Iran, I learned Persian, and I read a lot of literature translated from other languages into Persian. And I read some feminist literature, and that was the first time I didn't feel alone anymore. I realized my anger is actually justified. There are many more women like me who feel angry about the lack of freedom and lack of choices that I was experiencing. But also through books, I experienced many other ones.
So here's the question. Can you point to a turning moment in your life where you were like, this is not right, when you were younger?
Absolutely. 12, when I was about 12, I mean, I realized it from the age of 11 that things weren't good for me as a girl at that age, in that period. I think the years of, 12, 13, 14, 15, those are very formative years. And luckily, I was able to read a lot around that time. In fact, because I wasn't allowed to go out much and I didn't have much freedom, the only freedom I had was freedom of reading. And that in itself, I think my mother was very happy. She could see me sitting at home reading books. She really didn't realize how dangerous books can be, because they really can open your mind and liberate you from the present that you physically live in. So for me, those years were very formative and important.
Right. And then you had to leave the country, right? What was exactly going on where you had to leave the country and then you were able to explore different parts of the world?
First, my family fled to Iran. This was during the genocide campaign in 1988, the gassing. You probably have heard of the gassing of Halabja. There were 281 gas attacks between 1987 and 1989, and that's where my family fled. So I first ended up in Iran. I went to school there, studied in Persian. Eventually, after the first Gulf War, I made it to 1993. So, in fact, before returning home years ago, I had spent 26 years away, living abroad, displaced.
Got it. And then you went to school outside.
That's right. I
Right.
first version, and then later I continued with my education in the UK.
Got it. And then you made a decision to go back. Now that's fascinating. What was your reasoning to go back to this country where you were wanting to escape?
So I went through a phase when I was in the UK where my life was very good. I was making a name for myself as a poet. I had a job. I was doing my further studies. Everything was very good. And for a while, I felt finally I'm okay. I'm at home. I feel that I can live here. This is my country. London is home to me. And then I started doing my PhD about the refugee journeys of Kurdish women from Iran and Iraq. Their integration. Barriers towards happiness, the barriers they faced as women and as refugees in the UK. After that, I did my postdoc research about the genocide survivors, the 1988 genocide about before. And that involved a lot of field work and returning home and spending long stretches of time interviewing women in various small towns and villages and getting more and more involved in the homeland and the country. And obviously the oppression of women, because I think for a while in my 20s, I just found it all very traumatic. I wanted to move away from it, but then somehow, because of my research interests, I got pulled back into it. So when I was doing my postdoc, I realized I want to go home, and I did try a few times. Eventually, I came back in 2014.
So if you went home, you must have a vision that is strong enough, that is pulling you strong enough so that when the backlash comes, you're able to keep going. How bad is the backlash sometimes when you're teaching about women's studies and you are the champion for women's studies? Could you give us a little window into that world now that you're back and that you've been back in the country and you created a whole program in Iraq? What is the backlash like sometimes?
Let me first give credit to all the other women who are doing an amazing job here, activists and academics and writers and artists. So I'm not on my own. Fortunately, there's a vibrant women's movement here. So I came to AUIS with obviously I got hired as an instructor, American University of Iraq in Soleimani, as an instructor in the English department. And I came through my work as a poet and a translator, actually, not through my studies, but through my profession. And of course, I've studied philosophy, so literary theory was my thing also. And from the beginning, I wanted to start developing gender studies. But at the time when I came back, 2014, ISIS had just come into Iraq, and the Yazidi genocide had happened. More than 6,000 women and children were abducted. The women became sex slaves. This happened all a few weeks before my return. So it was a very tough time economically, the humanitarian crisis. And every time I spoke about setting up gender studies at AUIS, the leadership of the university at the time was saying, we cannot grow at the moment. Things are not going right, and we're trying to keep all the programs going. So I started developing courses in the English department that were also gender related. So, feminist writing, feminist criticism and women's writing, social justice in theory and practice, gendered representations of genocide. And I also found like-minded people in other departments who were willing to develop courses. And suddenly we had 8 courses developed at AUIS in 3 different departments.
Amazing.
And so a gender studies minor without the university having to hire a new instructor. We actually did it from scratch. And we are the first university in Iraq that has a minor. There are, of course, gender studies departments or gender studies courses in other universities, but we are the first one that has a concentration of 8 classes.
That's amazing. And to pave that ground is a big deal. It's a big deal in your country. It's a big deal, especially during that time period. And now you can actually minor in gender studies. And how many people are now inside the program?
It's a small program still. So we announced it in 2017. We only have to date 15 gender minors. 4 of them are male students and the rest are female. But you asked me about the backlash. It's very interesting because my first semester was probably my toughest semester at the American University.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I started teaching, even in my class, we have foundation core classes. One of them is critical reading and writing. I was teaching feminist literature because I wanted to critically examine the patriarchal argument and to find the flaws and contradictions and to develop a different kind of argument about the differences between men and women. And, many students had heard this for the first time, and they accused me of all sorts of things. She hates men, she blah, blah, blah. Don't take her class. If you don't agree with her, she will fail you. And all these misperceptions and judgments. But in fact, some of those students, and that's the interesting thing about teaching, when you're teaching students, some of them come back to you 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, after they graduate, and they say, that class really changed my mind. So, I'm a very patient person. So when I see students rolling their eyes or, looking at their watch all the time and thinking, oh, when is this going to be over? I always think maybe one day you will realize the importance of this. And sometimes, you realize it when you have a daughter, when your daughter goes out to the world and you see how she's discriminated against, then you will realize what I'm talking about.
It's beautiful because without creating that counter discourse, then it will never change. And that's the beauty of what your program is all about. It's like, there's a way that the society is thinking, and you're creating another world to look at it. And it may not hit them right away, but somehow, some way, something is getting through. How important is it that the men get involved in this conversation?
Now, there are feminists who believe that men cannot be feminists. I don't agree with that. I believe any man who believes in equality and actually works for it, gives up some of his own privileges in life, accepts equality of women fully, not just in theory, doesn't say the right words and then in his own life practices patriarchy. Men who challenge patriarchy, men who give up their own privileges and fight for women's rights are also feminists. So actually several years ago, I think 3 years ago, we announced that during International Women's Day, we announced the Mr Feminist Campaign, where we had many male students, staff, and faculty members. Each of them had to make a pledge. It could be a very small pledge, like, I will not laugh at sexist jokes, or I will support women in my life achieve their goals. But they had to make a promise. And some people say, oh, these men are doing it to look good, and probably true in some cases. But for others, I'm sure it triggers something that they have to make a promise. Maybe some of them will identify and will work towards attaining that goal. So we try to change also to remove the taboo from feminism. Sometimes feminist is used as a swear word. So-and-so is a feminist, as if she's a man eating something, And to say, no, anyone who believes in equality and fights for equality is a feminist.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. The opposite of patriarchy isn't necessarily matriarchy at all. It's fraternity. You know what I mean? We got to work together. We gotta shape a different world and think things differently. And I know you know this because we've talked about this, but originally the nonprofit I have, the SuperYou Foundation, was only just for girls. And then we realized that the boys need to play this game too. The boys need to see themselves as superheroes equally as the girls see themselves as superheroes. And I think that creates the shift. And it's beautiful that you have some men in your program. I think that's really amazing. Are they teased at all? The men that's in your program, are they looked at as outcast in some ways?
Oh, continuously on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Sometimes they really get attacked by other students who just think it's funny or it's pretentious or they don't mean it or challenge them or try to undermine them in various ways. But we also have many good people who just sort of, shake their, just dust their shoulders and rise up again and say, this is how it is. People gradually learn to deal with trolls, and to stand up for what they believe is right. And that's another thing we try to reinforce in our gender studies program, that we do have agency. Yes, there are many large forces at work against us, and there are many systems of oppression interacting together: class system, gender system, nationalism, racism, all sorts of weird ideas interact, ableism. But we can actually, we do have the power to stand up against them, especially if we stand together. So this idea of being, oh, the system is like this and it's strong and we can't change it, is something we try to change and say we can all work for equality, and if we work together, we may able to make big changes happen. And I can see in my own 6 years here, we can make changes if we work well together.
Yes, indeed. How important is it for women to support women in your work?
I'm so glad you asked that, because that's one of the things that, sisterhood, I mean, one of the mechanisms of patriarchy has always been, getting women to compete against each other and fight and gossip, because then men don't have to do much. Women do the fighting themselves. If a woman doesn't choose a traditional path of staying at home, family and children, and she chooses to have a career, or she chooses to travel for her work, or she chooses to challenge norms that are very, well accepted traditions, then other women are the ones who try to hold her back, and so on and so forth. So the idea of just seeing this, that gossip is a mechanism of patriarchy, women gossiping about each other, but you can turn that around. Gossiping about patriarchy could be an empowering practice. I mean, that's how women's movement started, by women talking to each other about how they felt, that they were unhappy. And this realization that it's not me, it's not my fault, I am not wrong because I am unhappy. I am actually experiencing oppression. You are experiencing oppression. And this solidarity and working together, that's how the feminist movement started.
It comes from working together. For anyone who's joined the Facebook Live, we are here with Choman Hardi, and she is in Iraq. She's an activist, a poet, a scholar, and she is leading the charge for amplifying the voices of women in Kurdistan, Iraq. And we are celebrating her because she is a superhero. So if anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat. And I'm just going to continue asking you some questions because I'm just so hungry to learn more. You had mentioned a story which I thought was fascinating about your daughter was at a party and they had certain toys for boys and certain toys for girls. And I love this story because it was about superheroes. So can you tell me a little bit about that story?
So basically, they came around when the kids were eating, and they gave each one a toy, and they gave Sewa, my daughter, a pink doll. And immediately her face crushed. I know her, so I just looked at her and she was like, "Oh, I don't want that doll." And I said, "What do you want?" She said, I want a Spider-Man. And I said, "Let's go and get one because there are others." And we went and got her a Spider-Man. And when she came back to the table, the boys in her class, it was a birthday party for a child in her class, they all said, Sewa, that's a boy's toy. That's not a girl's toy. You cannot have Spider-Man. And I said, she can have whatever she wants. If you want Spider-Man, she can have it. You can have a doll too if you want. And they were all giggling. I don't want a girl doll. These ideas about what's appropriate for a girl to aspire to and what's appropriate for a boy to aspire to become. We continuously have these conversations with my daughter. She's just turned 9, but she's already much more aware of the way she's continuously undermined. She cannot do this because she's a girl. She cannot play football because she's a girl. She cannot run fast because she's a girl. She cannot have a superhero toy because she's a girl. And to just always see that you can. Who says you can't? You can. Don't worry about what they say. It's going to be okay. It's been a very interesting thing because I don't remember these experiences from my own childhood, but I now see that actually patriarchy, indoctrination into the patriarchal system starts from such an early age. Mm-hmm. We are not even conscious of it. And that's why many of us end up for many years not seeing the system. But when you see the system, Arundhati Roy, this wonderful novelist, Indian novelist and writer, says, once you see the problem, you cannot unsee it. And I think that's what studying gender studies does to you. You see the problem which you didn't see before because it was so normalized, and so it seemed like nature, and suddenly you see it's not nature. It's actually constructed by us, by society and culture. And once you see that, you no longer see, you lose naivety, and it becomes a wonderful thing because you can imagine a different world where there is equality.
That's important. That's the whole the whole point of creating a narrative that's different than the way how it's normally indoctrinated into people, how it's normally fed to people. I remember you were telling me the story, and it stayed with me. It's still with me. It was about this man who killed his wife and child or children. Was it a child? And how he was viewed in the society. Can you please just give us a little window of that so we can paint the world?
Yeah, this is very interesting because there are still people in this community who believe it wasn't a case of a man killing his wife and child, and they politicize it because to them that's easier to accept, that he was killed with his family because of political conflict, rather than actually this man, he had a child with his wife. She decided to leave him. They were living apart, and he requested that they meet one last time before the divorce is finished. They have a meal with their child. So she went out with him one evening, and then this happened. He had threatened to kill her and the child many times in front of people, saying that if you leave me, I'll kill you, your son, and myself. People had seen him with the gun, the gun that was used to kill them all, and people still doubted. And, the interesting thing was, a few days after, I was in someone's house, and they were talking about, oh, yeah, we know he killed his wife. But really, he was an okay man. He probably had mental health disorders. And I got so angry, and I thought, so what makes a man not a good man? This man we're talking about is a murderer. He murdered a woman and a child and then committed suicide. Doesn't that make him a bad man in your eyes? So the way that people dissociate how a man treats a woman and how a man is in public. So to them, no matter what he does to a woman, even if he ends up killing her, he was generous, he was funny, he was kind, he was humane, and their perception of him doesn't change. So this disconnect is one of the things that we try to work on. And, I always say, you judge a man by how he treats women. I think in this community, that's what I do, because women are in an inferior position, as they are in many societies where there is patriarchy. And if a man mistreats a woman, that, in my eye, makes him a bad man. That's enough for me.
Right. It's the world and the uphill battle. Does it get discouraging sometimes? Do you feel like I can't do this anymore? What do you do mentally to keep fighting the good fight?
Oh, it gets very discouraging sometimes. There are many days where I get very, very tired of all the backlash and conflict. So I walk out of a workshop where a bunch of young men had come. They've heard of me. They know what I'm there going to argue. And they come there to just challenge me on everything I say. And one of the weapons they use, of course, is going back to cultural values, traditions, religion, law, and stuff. And sometimes I am exhausted by it. Or other times when, there's a lot of misjudgment and resistance, and there's a lot of social media threats and they share a picture of you and thousands of horrible comments are raining on you. And sometimes I tell my husband, wouldn't it just be easier to go back to London? We take our daughter there, she goes to a good school. One of the basic things we can't have here is we can't go to a swimming pool together because, you have to go to the women's time. I'm like, we can go to London, we can live happily, we can go to a swimming pool every Friday, all three of us together. Wouldn't that be nice? But you cannot give up. That's another thing. I would not be happy going back to London. I would probably be safe and protected. My daughter will probably be safer in some other ways and will have more advantages and opportunities. But I think one thing about people like us is that, yes, we have privileges, as many others do. And it doesn't feel right when we do not use our privileges to fight injustice, to help those who don't have the privileges that we have. To me, doing that is worth it, is worth the fight, is worth the depression, is worth the stress I experience. And sometimes I tell myself, obviously I've done something right. If somebody's so angry at me, if somebody's really attacking me, surely I've shaken something up, so that means good. But I think one thing I use, and my advice for young women who are doing this, is surround yourself with positive people and friends who at times when you're feeling down and when you are in doubt, they will remind you, you have to continue, that it will be okay, that this will pass, because you will also get a lot of support and encouragement. Otherwise, there are many other young women and men who say, thank you, thank you for saying this, thank you for doing this, we support you. So you have to take all the backlash with the good thing and with the changes that you're making. That's what makes a difference.
It is so beautiful that you gave that advice to young women. Surround yourself with people that believe in you, that support you. And I know that you do have a network of people. Is it within the education? Have you built this network, or did you have people who just really instinctively got it? How long did it take to build this network together?
It's very interesting, isn't it, Lourdes? Because you know that, I'm sure, that sometimes we invest in friendships and relationships and we are disappointed. People disappoint sometimes. Sometimes completely unexpected, someone that you hadn't counted on will become very important for you at a particular moment and will support you. I mean, one of the people who's been wonderful, whom I met once in a conference in the US, is Jan Warner, our mutual friend. She invited me to a conference, we stayed in touch, and she has played an important role in my life, because when I started setting up the Gender Studies Center in the American University, I was working full-time as a professor and I needed support just to get an admin's assistant to help me out with organizing training events, fundraising and so on. And she was able to give me that support, someone I had no expectation from, because I had only met her once in the US, So I think the universe provides for us. And I think we naturally gravitate towards positive people. Since my return home, I have made many new friends that weren't part of my life before. In fact, one of them, I'm speaking from her house now, her name is Shirin. We knew each other from Europe, but we were never friends. She also came back to take part in this development and rebuilding our homeland. And we have become very good support to each other. So I think it's very, very important to find like-minded people. And sometimes actually they also come to you. I think if you continue doing good work, if you continue to have faith, the right people will come, and the right people will support you at times when you don't even expect it.
Yes, I think that is the key. The key is just keep going, and with your mission and your heart and your drive. And at some point, you will attract the team,
yes,
the family, the tribe, but you just got to keep going, keep pushing through. And when you have a vision that's bigger than yourself, sometimes the more you can push through, because if it's just about your own personal problems, it's hard to get it there. But when you go, listen, somehow, some way, little by little, change will happen, even if it's in the back of their heads. Somehow, some way, it's happening, and that's enough sometimes, right? Sometimes that's enough.
That's right. My wonderful colleague, Dr. Lynn Rose, who came to the American University by accident, I didn't know her at all. Social science department hired her, and she became one of my colleagues in the Gender Center, and she's been wonderful support. One of these days I told her, oh, there's so much negativity and criticism, and sometimes it's actually from other women, unfortunately. Sometimes you get undermined, and your credibility is undermined continuously by other women. For various reasons, the patriarchal systems do that. And she said to me, and I said, I don't know what to do. I cannot shut these voices out, and it's horrible. I mean, it hurts much more than when a man criticizes me. I expect that from patriarchy. But when women do, it hurts more. And she said, all you need to do is focus on the goal. Focus on the goal, and this will pass. And I think that's very important, because if you genuinely care, and if you're willing to go through the tough and to hear the difficult stories, and to continue advocating, to continue being true to yourself and to what you believe in, to not be corrupted, to not be desensitized, and to march on forward, it will always bring a lot of positive energy surrounding you. You will be okay at the end. I mean, we are never in a complete donor situation. None of us are so amazing that we continuously give. We receive a lot back from colleagues, friends, but also from the people students, and people that we may have helped in one way or another.
I just want to read this one comment, and I think you answered it already, but just in case you have anything to add to it. I'm a recovering people pleaser, working hard to heal my past trauma. I know there's a rebel educator activist in me waiting to burst out once I harness my power. What advice do you have for living my values in the face of a compliance-based, racist, crushing system of K through 12 ed?
Yes, I think that's very, very tough. And I think what I do whenever I find I have a big dream that I want to fulfill, I try to break it down into smaller steps. I always ask myself, what can I do now at this moment? I cannot achieve my goal. That's far-fetched. It may be too big. What is the first step I can take? It may be something small, but set yourself small steps that you can achieve. Always discuss and seek support. Never be shy to ask for support. There are so many wonderful people who will help you. They will not do it because they want money. They will not do it because it's an advantage to them. They will do it because they believe in you. But before you do that, you have to be very clear about what you want, about exactly, what are your ambitions. Draw them out on a piece of paper. Think about the steps you can take. Think about the help that you need, and reach out to good people. Sometimes I reach out on social media. Sometimes I put out a line or two, I need this. And I'm always surprised by the number of good people who come back to me and say, I can help with this. I can edit this for you. I can support you with this. There are good people out there. Reach out to them. Find friends. Work with friends. As a feminist, I firmly believe in sharing power and resources. These are feminist principles. Do not take all the credit for yourself. Always give credit when credit is due. Always try to empower. Always try to share decision-making with others. Involve people in your dreams. We cannot achieve our dreams on our own. We always need a good team. So start building a team, take small steps, and seek support. I cannot hear you. You're muted.
I'm so serious. Oh, just there you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I said start building a team and you'll achieve that dream. We just created a whole slogan for our chat, right? Build that team and you'll achieve that dream. But you build the team just by, as you say, keep your eye on the prize, have a clear vision, and keep going. Just keep going. It's beautiful, Choman, and it's inspiring. One other question here. If a woman were killed by her husband for leaving her, if it were a woman who killed her husband for leaving her, how would she be perceived or treated?
A murderer. Yeah. I mean, the problem is, the law has changed in our region. So in the past, before 2002, there was a law that permitted men to kill women if he could prove that it was for reasons of honor. It was the honor killing sort of provision for men. Now the law has changed. Men, whenever they kill a woman, it's just as killing a man. It's killing a human being. So that's great that the law has changed. But implementation and practice of the law is something else. So there are always false alibis, and there's a whole community of people who support perpetrators, unfortunately. And sometimes the judiciary system itself does not implement the law properly. And there are many issues in political interferences and so on and so forth. So this is patriarchy, right? The same crime committed by a woman is much worse than this, than what a man gets in return. I just want to go back to your previous question, though, because I think I don't want to sound over optimistic and not acknowledge the barriers that our friend here mentioned, a racist and sexist and oppressive society. I don't believe that we alone, it's our fault if we don't succeed. Obviously, it is not. There are so many barriers and structural invisible roofs that prevent us. But I think if we build teams, if we work together, we can work through some of it. And I think it's very important not just to work on our own, work for ourselves, but to try to remove those barriers, those structures that are in place that hold people back. And that's what we're trying to do when we're trying to work on justice, any of the social justice causes. We're trying to remove barriers and we're trying to make structural changes. So I just wanted to point that out in case people think that I'm one of those people who believe, it's all up to you whether you make it or not. Sometimes, unfortunately, we also need a bit of luck. Sometimes we get bad luck, but that's not going to continue forever. We have to just believe and continue working hard and building team.
Slowly, little by little, you start chipping away at the system that doesn't work. And I know that sometimes there are people who are part of the story and they never even see the end result. They don't see that massive change. I just passed this sculpture, which was just erected. It's a suffragette sculpture in Central Park. And these 3 suffragettes actually never saw women voting. You know what I mean? They were fighting for women's causes, but they never really saw the change, but didn't stop them. Yes. Little by little, the change will be made somehow. And having faith in that and knowing that you are a part of that change. Sometimes it's enough, and yes, you're right. Sometimes you need luck, right? Yes. Sometimes you need, and there's negativity coming at you sometimes, but little by little, the change will happen. And that's the thing you have to hold on to, I would suspect, is holding on to the larger vision and inspiring the rest of your team to say, yes, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter, because fear is the tool of the patriarchy, creating that swirl, right?
Absolutely. So, and I think you were absolutely right. Social change sometimes takes longer than our lifetime. You have to love the process. Don't see just the end. The end should be the process for you. While you're making small changes, yes, changing small things, that should be small rewards that you realize maybe when my daughter's grown up, maybe her children will see the different world. But we're working towards that, and that's what matters.
That's beautiful. I want to just throw some comments that I'm reading. Thank you for your hard work. The Kurdish people in the world is proud to have such an intelligent and strong woman.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And then, although it is clear that the whole world is going to take a lot of time to catch up to ideas of equality, how do you see Kurdistan developing in that direction?
Issues of equality, I think it's very important for us to realize that we cannot just work on gender equality and ignore the other equality issues. So to take an intersectional approach where we're thinking about class, race, ethnicity, gender, ability or disability, sexuality, all of these into consideration, because our language is full of symbolic violence towards people with disability, towards women, towards ethnic minorities or religious minorities. We have to work on those together. And I think we are at a very exciting phase in Kurdistan and Iraq, because many of these debates are being had at the moment. You have the conservative side and you have the feminists on one side. You have a fight for secular constitution and you have the Islamic constitution supporters. And you have many discussions on TV, on radio, on daily basis, in cars, and these conversations are all very healthy, because none of us can impose our view on the other. What we need to do is to reach consensus on certain standards. As a community has to agree on what is right, what is more inclusive for most of us, what serves the needs of the majority of people, and not just a certain bunch of men or able-bodied, powerful men. We need to be more inclusive, and I think we are having those conversations now. We still have a long way to go, but I am always optimistic. I don't think it's impossible. I think we are working towards it.
It's beautiful. One last comment, and then we'll try to do another little poem to close it out. I know the universe is reminding me at this moment I have luck, because you're speaking such inspiration to my heart.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. That's very kind of you.
It's wonderful. I would love to thank you, Choman. You are truly a superhero to us here from the SuperYou team, and an inspiration for the world. Thank you for your beautiful work. And if you don't mind, let's see if we can do a hopeful poem. This is not even published, right?
That's not published. That's right.
That's great. And we're gonna try to do another violin jam, and I'm gonna just this time, because there's a time delay anyway, I'm just gonna play you speak over it, and let's see what kind of world we can create, some sort of synergy after all this time of talking. Maybe there's gonna be some musical magic between New York City and Kurdistan, Iraq. What do you think, Choman?
Wonderful. Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, what's the name of the poem, Choman?
It's called On the Verge of Hope, and it's about daring to hope despite the desperations. Let me not miss this mild mist, which does not know how it may twist, stretching ahead into glare, to dare the lingering, acknowledge the monotonous hum of hold my breath, dare to a turnaround of what there is. Isn't this all we have left? Conspire against the invisible. Be patient that it will be here.
Be patient that it'll be here. That's a great way to end this, right? Be patient that it'll be here. It's a great honor and joy. Thank you so much for being our superhero, Choman. And I am so thoroughly moved. I hope everyone out there also understands how powerful our voices are and that we can make a difference in the whole world. We all have that superhuman power. And thank you for inspiring us, Choman.
Thank you, Lord, and your team. It's been wonderful talking with you. All the best with all the wonderful work you do.
Love you, Choman. Thank you for everything.
Bye-bye.
Bye.